All right, it's test 1 2 1 2. I think we're online here. It's 10 10. For those of us that are here and have had we're coffee powered and we're connected. I think we're okay. We're gonna start slowly. We got 10 15, but we got a little 5 minutes here to kill. One of the things that's interesting is from yesterday. We shared a lot of information and some of the little workshops that we had, or little working groups, and we got some interesting, how do you say, insights. And this is what the ICI is doing. And for those of you that it's your first time, definitely appreciate what you share and then what you hear. And this is what this whole idea of ICI is. One of the things yesterday is we had. I showed Mike McCormick from the unceded territory of Wikwemkong, his little data center. And this is what it looks little, but you see the size of it. But this is also like data sovereignty. And you see where it's housed and the location. One of the things for a lot of, for us and here in North America, especially northern communities, fire is a real concern. And this is for our infrastructure. How do we address that, and some of the things that are never answered or never questioned? I live in a little rural area, and I have trees around me. And then when I heard the fires, first thing is like, yeah, I look at my house, I look at the infrastructure, and I have an open area. And one of the things I considered was I was looking at a sea container, like you see those shipping containers you see on oceans. They're like 20 feet and 40 feet. I was looking at purchasing one, and the reason why is that when fires burn, they burn like crazy, and they throw off a lot of infrared radiation. And anything in its path or close proximity, anything that burns will definitely burn. So what I was looking at, this is my crazy thinking, is that I was looking at a shipping container because I have maybe about a quarter acre of open area, and I was thinking of putting, if there was a major fire that was coming, I was thinking of putting all my belongings from my house into that area because I have a little log home kit, and putting it out in the open far enough so the infrared radiation doesn't get it. And I was talking with Michael. Part of the discussion too, he says, yeah, you could also bury it. So these are the kind of things that happen, and we've seen a lot of the communities what's happening with the fires. So Felici, there's the book. Felici is our technician over there. He's been very cooperative, and I appreciate our audio and sound. There's something that if you get a chance, this one, fire weather. If you get a chance, pick it up, look at it. You can do it online or just see the review. What's curious about this one is like what happened in Fort McMurray. Fort McMurray was leveled, a good portion of it, and one of the things was you could only go one way in and one way out. After this fire, they really looked at it something differently. But in there is, when you read it, is what happened to the infrastructure that was there? What happened to their connectivity and infrastructure? You don't hear that. And this is what I would be looking at, or this is what I was asking. What happened to all that infrastructure? And it became more apparent after this, in gathering with every one of you here. What happened to their infrastructure, or the little infrastructure that they had? Was it above ground, below ground? How much of it was affected, and how much of it is operational? Those are some of the things that we take for granted, and it's never asked. Are they able to communicate? And this is a non-Indigenous large community that's in the oil fields. They had to rethink some of their stuff. And these are the things that you're looking at. So if you get a chance to check it out, etc., it's just an aside, or when you have a flight, you need something to read, check it out. But before we start, is like I just wanted to know is like, how vulnerable are we? Every one of us here, we come from Indigenous communities far and wide, and we come from non-Indigenous communities as well, both in the rural, remote areas. And when we look around and we see the fires, this kind of gets us a different mindset and different thinking. So one of the things that I'd like to ask really quick is I just want a show of hands. How many of you have debit and credit cards? Okay, that's pretty good. And okay, so that's one. That's quite a bit. That's just almost everybody. That's quite a bit. Okay, next question is, how many of you have between $50 and $80 in cash on you? Okay, so there's not very many hands. Okay, Felici, put up the first one there about I think the Roger. There's one about the outage, power outage. There's one here that this one, 2022. Everybody remembers this one. How many remember this one? Oh, all right. Okay. Yeah, we know what happened in there, right? There was an outage. I had a sister that was out in Vancouver and she was there and she happened to, two credit cards. And her hubby had one credit card and they wanted to make a change. They were there for one of the conferences. And she says, something for me. She says, I have to go and get $150. She went to the bank and then that night her hubby wanted to change. They were going to stay a little extra. He went on his credit card and he couldn't get the credit card to change. He couldn't have access because he wanted to change the flight. And she says she had two credit cards. She says, I'll try the same one that you have. She couldn't, but she got their second one. In the morning, they got up and this is when they found out this is what happened. Many of her colleagues at the conference woke up that morning. They had, guess what? They had debit and credit cards. Nobody could get coffee. Some of them had cash, a lot of them didn't. And she went to the airport. Some of her colleagues, same thing. She says they look pretty worse for wear. Lucky they had their tickets, but they're waiting, but they couldn't get any coffee, couldn't get anything. So one of her friends, she was giving $50 because the friend was so appreciative. Oh, thank you. I can have a coffee and stuff like that. So, and this one was widespread and there's a report to that. And I think CRTC and stuff, there's stuff out there. So this is some of this, how vulnerable are we? But I think Felici, there's a second one too. There's another one here. And I think this one we can attest to is the Northeast blackout of 2003. You see the map in the corner, how far the blackout was. For here in Canada, Ottawa was blacked out. I live on the other side, and what was funny, yesterday you heard stuff about there's John Perino and Davinda and Brenda. They talk about redlining. This is the first time I like this one. I don't know. I think the redlining in U.S. government, it seems like they use maybe to cross out budgets. You use a red pen, etc. Well, this one here, this was a black line. It was very noticeable. The river between here, between Ontario and Quebec. You go on Quebec, the lights were on and everything, and all of Ontario up to Toronto, everywhere was dark. It was freaky. People on Ontario were sitting on patios on Quebec side looking at admiring how dark it is over there on the Ontario side. But I was thinking of people in Toronto, people in buildings coming down like 30 floors or whatever. They had to come down by stairs and no air conditioning and stuff like that. So some of the vulnerability, but so the question is asked is if you have these systems, how are you backing them up and how are you doing it? So those are some of the questions that I think what's nice here is that every one of you have that. Like here, Davinda, you have Navajo territory, very large, okay? But I think territories like that, Cree territories, whatever, you have these systems. And because of what you deal with and knowing your community and knowing your territory, you have some of that infrastructure. You don't have it all covered, but you do have some of those emergency things. So that's really important to you is like how vulnerable are we and how much do we use? For Indigenous nations, First Nations, we're familiar with not having some of that. So we've made do, but at the same time, when we build things, we build some of those things in with those considerations. So that's the kind of thinking I think that's we're looking at. And these are some of that's coming out in these discussions here. So if you get a chance, check out the book and keep this in mind. Keep this in mind because it went pretty far into the southwestern, the northeastern states. A lot of the power goes over. And there's one thing I think I heard Trisha Toso is up next. They're coming up next. Is I think there's a secondary line that's built in Quebec, Hydro-Quebec, that's going to also send power over the border. But one of the things about that is I think it's sort of like a redundant line, maybe. They're not telling us or we don't know, but if you look online, you get an arrow and look, this is something that it does. Because in that book that was up earlier, the infrared radiation now is scattered by the column of fire nados. Burns intense, like before it would just burn, but now it does a swirl and the amount of IR it throws out is considerable. So you think of towers, some of the lines are aluminum and things like that. It usually melt structures, etc. And if you have a wall, it's hard to visualize a forest fire, but if you've seen one, it's very scary. But then you see the health conditions that you have to deal with, like the fallout in terms of respiratory, etc. So one of those things is that yeah, it involves people and stuff. So this is how we get into the next one is, have we made progress in building an Indigenous workforce and networking? And I think this is happening here, and I'm talking to the students and the students that are, and also the youth, that it's important, and they're seeing the importance of networking, because some of our youth here are making contacts with every one of you and vice versa, and they actually want to go out and visit some of the communities and see what the infrastructure is there and where are the gaps, and gaps are considerable.